Hi.
She's
Hi,
getting here. Hi,
Rita.
Rita.
how are you?
Really
Good.
great. I love watching teacher studios. Rita, I'm Kathy Anderson. I think I may have met you briefly at IAPS back in 2019. It was my very first one, and I was meeting a lot of new people at that time. But thank you so much for saying yes to Margie and being able to join us. And it looks like we have a few of your followers that are joining us. Outreaches from all over the United States. We've got Cape Cod, Kathy in Cape Cod, and Joe is up in Mariposa. And Crystal, you're in Cape Cod, and Kathy, you are in, where did you say you were? St. Louis. There we go.
Cool.
Really cool. And then Margaret is the one who was just down at Destination Art. So for those of you that aren't familiar with us out in Southern California, we're just located maybe, a 20, 30 minutes drive from LAX, basically along the coastline. This is a place where we have a lot of education in the art community, not necessarily just Pastel, but Margaret was one of the founding members of Pastel Society of Southern California. And so if you want to do watercolor, acrylic, sketching, all sorts of classes, Destination Art is a really nice go-to place for us to be able to get other forms of art education.
Cool.
Thanks, Kath. Rita, you seem to teach almost every day. Am I right about that?
It seems like lately, not really, but I've just had a really busy week because with my Patreon page, I do 4 what I call virtual open studio days. Those actually started in 2020 when I had to practice for some Zoom workshops that fall. So I started doing these things here like this, and I just kept doing them. And
Right.
then I decided to start a Patreon page where I could post the videos. But anyway, I have 4 of those a month, and one of them is a paint along. The paint along is always on a Saturday. Well, because of IAPS, I had to have my paint along the first Saturday this month. So I just had the paint along last Saturday. I just had a virtual open studio day on Wednesday evening. And on Wednesday afternoon, I had another demo for somewhere else in California where I painted a bunny. So I was out here twice on Wednesday, and then I was out here on Saturday. And then yesterday, again, it was a Wednesday evening virtual open studio. And then here I am today, here for y'all. So I've done like what? That's four of these events in the last 7 days, 8 days, I guess.
So people may ask this several times, but what paper are you going to plan on using tonight?
I use Gatorboard.
Oh, paperboard. Okay.
Yeah. Although my process works equally well on hot pressed watercolor paper, and I've even used. I have a pad of Canson Bristol around here somewhere.
Oh, that's great stuff.
And I've used that, and it works really good with this. I just don't like wetting and taping. I don't want that extra step, so that's why I like Gatorboard.
Yeah. Rita, did you put a texture on your Gatorboard?
Yeah, I have a single layer of the primer on there already.
What type of primer do you use? I mean, that's a little bit beyond what I've done.
Yeah, the document that was posted with the paint along with this event tonight, the document had all that in there.
Oh, well, then I'll read it.
In case you read it or not. But I'll go over that also when I start. But yeah, I guess it is. You guys don't have, this isn't any kind of meeting first, right? It's just, we just jump right into
No, this is you. This is fun time. Fun time
Awesome.
with Rita in the studio and everybody asking questions. And yeah, this is not a meeting. But anyway, it is just about 6:30. So I think what we'll do is we'll get this party started. I am going to start recording.
Recording in progress.
So everybody, good evening. Thursday, June 9th, 2022, Pastel Society of Southern California. I'm Kathy Anderson, the president of the Society, fine group of artists. And we're introducing today Rita Kirkman, who's joining us from where, Rita?
New Braunfels, Texas, a little bit south of Austin.
Great. And Margie, are you still on? Margie, take it away.
Oh, hi, Rita. Thank you for joining us tonight. And you can start right in explaining your method and tell us a little bit about your background. That would be great. You and I have one thing in common, I know, which is I'm a big Carol Maureen fan. I think I read that Am I correct in stating that?
Yeah, I learned so much from the workshop I took with her.
Yeah, she's pretty great. Occasionally when I get stuck, I'll go back and look at some of her paintings just to inspire me. Now I can go to your page on LinkedIn. For those of you who don't know, Rita has a page on LinkedIn, which is terrific.
And yeah, actually I put all the same stuff there as I put everywhere, so
Oh,
whatever your favorite media is, you can follow me.
so you're also on Instagram, correct?
Yeah.
Yep, you're on all of them. Okay.
In fact, I just made a link tree,
Great.
and I had heard of it just a few months ago, and finally decided to make one. I had no idea what it was really, but I heard that it was a good tool for Instagram, so I made one, and I love it. I love it because I have so many. There's so many sites where I'm at, like where I have a listing or something, and there's so many different things I do that I just have everything all right there.
Cool.
And I'm so excited. I have to say this while everybody's coming on. I've been invited to be one of the instructors for the Pastel Live online thing that happens in August.
Publishing.
Yes, the second annual Pastel Live. I'm going to do a demo. So
that's wonderful, wonderful.
So if I want to send my link for that to y'all afterwards. And,
That'd be wonderful.
Because honestly, just between us, they send each instructor their own link, and the instructors get a little bit of a commission every time somebody signs up with their link.
Very cool.
So I know, isn't that ingenious, the way he does that marketing, right?
Absolutely. Were you in, I don't remember you being involved with the first Pastel Live.
No, I wasn't. So,
okay. So when he started with the Plein Air Live, because of the first series of COVID, I started signing up, and we were just going, please bring Pastel Live. And so finally they were able, whatever, manipulations that Eric had to go through, was able to bring it to us, and just really, really pleased to have been able to have our own dedicated medium just to the pastel artist. It was wonderful, but congratulations. It'll be great. To be able to see you on the second annual Pastel Live event.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess I'll just jump in here. I'm going to be explaining my whole process and my materials as I go along here. What I'm going to be doing here is this cow tonight, and I really kind of sometimes like these half faces, especially if the lighting is right on them. I feel like they really give a good smaller, simple composition of light and shadow patterns. So when I found this photo, and I think I might have painted this cow before as a full face painting at some point, but I took another look at it and thought that it might make a really good half face. I know I wanted to keep tonight simple, partly for your sake if you're going to be painting along, but also for my sake because it's 8:30 p.m. and it's going to be my bedtime by the time I'm done here. But what my process is I consider what I do kind of a two-part process. I like to underpaint, and then I pastel. And while I'm underpainting, I like to use these two very warm colors. I love the warm colored underpaintings. And what I like to underpaint are these are my materials. They're also in the PDF that I put on the page for you all for this event. But I'll show you these here, and when you get the video, you'll also be able to pause the video at this point and see these. This is the quinacridone nickel azo gold fluid acrylic color. That's the golden brand. And I mix it with the golden brand pastel ground. And I also actually like using the golden fine pumice gel. This is my Kellen. I started off using this stuff, and I don't notice any difference between the two. This is a newer product, and they say it's a little more transparent, but it works the same. So I mix those two together at about 1/4 or 1/5 color to gel ratio, and this is my color mixture. So it looks a lot darker when it's wet, but it goes on this really nice transparent gold color. And when I start my underpaintings with this is going to represent my lightest values. Now the darker value that I put in my underpaintings is this product, the Art Spectrum brand multimedia primer in the terracotta color. And I just love how these two colors, this gold and this terracotta, look together. I just love the warmth of them. I'm going to show you how that goes. My first step with my, put some of this on a paper plate. My first step with my gold primer is to look at my reference, and I want to identify where my lightest values are, my very lightest lights, and then I'm going to avoid those areas because I already have this first layer of the primer on here. That's going to represent my very lightest layers. Let me switch to my easel view. So the other places where I'm going to put this are going to be the next lightest. So not the lightest light, but the next lightest. And as this goes on, you'll see that it gets a little bit slightly deeper and slightly richer with each application. So let me see. Some of these areas are going to have terracotta on them as well. But I'm going to start with the gold and then layer up the terracotta on top as it's needed. But I'm going to avoid like this area here. Oh wait, I think that was a bright one. Yep. If you catch this stuff really quickly, you can sometimes mop it back up. But since it's acrylic, it does dry pretty quick. The other thing I like to do while I'm applying these is I like brushing this on in the direction that the fur is flowing. Because the textures that this makes is going to really help. It's going to help that illusion of furriness in the animal. I'm using a piece of sponge as my brush. You guys can use brushes or whatever you're familiar with, but I've just gotten really hooked on these sponges. For one thing, because I don't have to clean any brushes when I'm done. And I think actually that's the only reason. The other reason is that I wanted to loosen up. When I started doing these underpaintings, got something in there. I started doing them. I did start with a little brush, like a little 1/4 inch bristle brush, and I just got too tight. And it was slowing me down, I felt. So then I switched to some of those sponge brushes that you can get at Hobby Lobby. But those things are so awkward. You can't hold them by the handle. It's useless. So I'm also putting this in some of this warm golden colored fur that's on this. I knew this would be an easy one because of all these colors. A lot of these colors are just the primer colors on this cow. This might not need much pastel once I get the underpainting done.
This is Kath. Crystal has a question. Is this paint alone that's currently being applied, or is it the pumice and the paint?
It's the pumice and the paint. This is my mixture. This is my mixture of the gold color with the pastel ground or the pumice gel. And that's what I've got here on my plate that I'm using. So it has the pumice in it. It's the same thing that I have on the board to begin with. So you see as the second layer goes on, it's a little bit darker because the stuff is just semi-transparent. So it does get a little bit darker on each application. So I'm really just looking for my values, and wherever I have a value that's a little bit darker than my lightest light, I'm trying to put some of this. Some areas like in the ear, I'm just going to avoid that with the gold because I know it's going to be solid terracotta because it's that dark. And this shadow over here also, I won't need any gold there. So I am putting gold in these areas that are sort of in between, sort of an in-between value, between the lights and the shadows. Should put a piece of tape. I put a piece of tape on my bottom edge because my painting is jiggling. Okay. So these colors that it's going to get are going to be really nice. The gold and the terracotta. Now what I've just done here is just what I call the second layer of the gold primer. I consider this the first layer that was on the board already. And then what I've just put on here is layer number 2. And then I usually give it a layer number 3 at some point. Get this up here. In fact, most of this up here has a bit more of a glow to it. I found by trial and error that when the terracotta goes on after this gold, even though it's mostly, the terracotta is mostly an opaque color, you can get some transparency out of it. So wherever there's a tone, like the tone right here in the photo is a nice warm reddish brown, but it's not as dark as the shadow. It's gonna have terracotta on it, but I want more of the gold underneath it because it adds a bit of richness to it that I really like. So whenever I see areas like that, I make sure that I have some gold on there first. So there's the second layer of the gold. This part here is pretty dry where I started. So I'm going to go in again, give it that third layer that I like giving it. And here I'm also looking for value. Where are my darker values? Some of this will also have terracotta. Some of the shadow on the horn is very dark. I'm going to have some terracotta right there and right under here. The gold color in this process really just represents your lightest third of your values. It's not really going to represent midtones by itself. When I combine it with some terracotta, it'll represent some midtones. And I also like getting most of my texture in with the gold. So you see how I've avoided all of this because it's so light, that's going to be my lightest light. So it really doesn't need anything else on there. Might need a few more fuzzy sort of edges here. That. So now here with this third layer, I'm starting to get a little bit of this variation of tone that's going on the side of this face. Slightly deeper along this edge. And then over here, it's really rich tones. This right here is probably going to have some terracotta on it also because it's slightly darker than this. Okay. So one thing I haven't considered yet, which I should have with the first layer, is my background. And with backgrounds, backgrounds are just secondary. They're like a supporting cast to your subject. You don't have to make a background the same as you see it in the photo. You can decide what you want to do with it. And while I'm in the underpainting mode, all I'm thinking about is value. So what I want to think here is what value do I want that upper background there? Do I want it to appear to be sky? Do I want it to appear to be ground like it is? Do I want it to be a light value or a dark value or a mid value? I kind of like the idea of it being Actually, either one. You know what? I think I might, if you can't decide, just start with something. I'm going to start with a mid to light value, but I'm going to put in at least some tone that's darker than the highlight on that horn, because I want that highlight to pop. I'm not quite sure yet how I want the background to interact with this slightly darker tone. Right now, in the photo, when I squint, in the photo, the value of the background looks to be about the same as the value of the back of the cow here. I'm not sure if I really like that. I think it ought to be either dark like this dark, or lighter, like maybe a sky tone, sort of. So for now, I think I'm gonna picture it as a skyish sort of tone. Something that's a little darker than this highlight. And the blue, if I make that blue up there, that might really make these warm colors of the cow pop. So that's what I'll be thinking of when I'm painting this. So as you see, I'm controlling my texture. I'm spreading this out just a little more than I did with all of this stuff. So this was a second layer here, and this is the second layer up there. It's just a slightly different look to it because I've spread it out just a little bit more. And I think I'm going to let that be then here for that. Oh, there is something right there. A little bit, it's a little bit more gold right there. Go. Okay. Now I'm going to get to the terracotta after I put this excess primer back in my jar. Anybody have any questions at this point? I want to make sure I let most of this dry before I go over it with the darker.
Rita, this is Kath. I have a question. So you talked about foam, you know, then you don't like the foam that's on the brushes. So are you taking the foam and then just cutting them up into your wedges?
You could do that, but the foam that I'm using is actually, let me show you a couple pieces. It's actually the stuff that comes, well, initially what I used here is the stuff that comes on the inside of an airfloat art shipping box. the middle part that you take out where you put your painting in. It's made with this foam, and it's perforated at every inch. So you could break off little squares like this, and then I'll cut the square into a wedge shape. And I started using those because I had a ton of airfloat boxes from shipping paintings out to shows. And then I completely got addicted to this stuff. And so more recently, in the last year or so, I've figured out what this is called and where to get it. It's called pick and pluck foam, or pick and pull foam. Pick and pluck or pick and pull. And there's a site that sells it. Actually, the stuff that it sells that's the pick and pluck is not nearly as nice as the stuff from the airfloat boxes, but they also have the top or bottom insert that is a lot better. Let me see if I can pull out a bigger piece. I have a bigger piece than this right now, but it's a lot firmer. It's not perforated, but it comes in whatever size sheet you want to get it in and whatever thickness you want. But I absolutely love this stuff. It's not as cheap as this. I probably won't be ordering any of this anymore. This is what their pick and pluck is. But it's this is still really nice and ideal, but this is even firmer, ever so slightly firmer than this stuff. And I just love it. It lasts longer. You can get a little bit tighter detail with it. I shouldn't like it because of that, because I want to be loose. But usually when I get to my terracotta, I'm using this, especially on the smaller paintings. I might not use it here because I want to be loose with this. It's a little bit larger. But I really love this stuff. And when I send you info afterwards, I'll include that website. It's what is it? I have it written down. Foam by mail is what it is. Foambymail.com.
Well, thank you for the intel on that.
All kinds of different foam. And actually, you have to like search their menu for the pick and pluck foam. But yeah, they've got it. Other places have it too. If you just do a Google search for pick and pull or pick and pluck foam, you can find other places that are selling it. Okay, so on to the terracotta here. And I think maybe I will just use one of my regular foam pieces. Let me get my scissors and show you how I cut this. When I have a square, I'll cut it at an angle, not exactly corner to corner, but a little bit off, like right about there. And then I have two pieces that are kind of anvil shaped, and they have this 1/4 inch end that's flat. It almost imitates a 1/4 inch flat brush, which I love using. And then the back end is a wider flat piece that I can blend and smear stuff around or lift stuff up. So it's pretty convenient. Okay, so when I'm starting with the terracotta, I like to get the darkest areas in first, because a little bit goes a long way and you never know how much you have on the sponge. If I tried to put even that much in this eye, I might have too much and have it smeared around in more areas than I need it. So I always start with the darkest area, and then as I spread it out, I'll see how far it will go. And then it might start getting a little fuzzy. When it starts to get fuzzy, I can utilize what I call like dry brushing. It got a little worn out quickly. I always like using just a little bit at a time, because you can always add more, but it's harder to lift it back up. And on these fuzzy animals, it's good to keep them looking fuzzy. Okay, so for the eye, I just have a little bit, see here. Now, part of this other part of the eye is in shadow as well. I'm not going to try to leave the white part of the eye. It really is too small of an area. I can pastel that part in. And then there's another shadow right here. See how I'm using the back end of the brush? My sponge, this is my sponge brush. Just the same as you have favorite brushes. If you are an artist who uses wet mediums, you have a favorite brush, you know how to use it, you know what it can do for you. It's the same way with the sponge. After a while, it's got kind of light. That up again. Okay. Then my next dark area is probably down here. So when the terracotta goes on really flatly, it is pretty darn opaque. But the way that I get various tones out of it is like this, by scuffling and dry brushing sometimes. Other times I might use it like with a wet sponge. You can get more of a wash out of it, and sometimes I do that. But I usually am too lazy and I want to get, see, here's some dry brushing. I want to just see how far I can get with one load of primer. Spread this out more. And then scuffle that residue back up into here. Sometimes I can smear it, whatever works, to get the values that you want. It's really just like painting. I mean, it is painting. It's painting. It's just painting with a sponge instead of with a brush. But you could probably do all these same effects with a brush if you really knew how to handle the brush, which I don't know if I would know how to handle a brush to make them do these things. That's the nice thing about this sponge, is that it's like a small brush and a fat brush all in one. I can take the back end and just smear all of that out. Have a hard time doing that with just a 1/4 inch brush. Let's see, I'm going to dry this off a little bit. Get some dry brushing going up here. So I'm just barely giving it any pressure now, because I want to get this effect. A lot of this texture happening is from the gold primer that's on there, but I left a lot of texture on. There. And let's see. So now you can really see how light the gold parts are and how that shadow on the face is really going to need to come down in value. So I'm going to start in here. Some of these wispies. Here around this horn, at the base of the horn, there's some really dark areas. It's in between fur. And if you notice, when I put the gold on the horn, I tried to brush it around the horn this way instead of going up and down the horn, because that's how horns grow. And then you'll have the texture, this texture in there from the gold primer, showing the horn growing around cylindrically, which really helps the whole effect of the horn. This is sometimes tricky. This sort of shadow there, something like that. All right. So I'm still really just thinking about value during this whole underpainting process. I'm not thinking of this shadow as being blue. I'm thinking of it being a value that's a little lighter than this, but definitely darker than this. This was the top part of the nose. Let's see if I can soften that out a little bit. Here's the mouth.
Rita, this is Kath. We have a question from Wanda. She wanted to know what you used to draw the outline of the cow on the first layer, through your contour drawing.
Yeah, just a pastel pencil. I like to use a pencil that's close in temperature, so a mid-toned warm pencil, something that's going to harmonize well with these primers. So this is just some orangey sort of melon color, like pinkish, that I had in there.
And then Margaret asked a question. Margaret, there was a reference photo that was sent out, and she says, for us city dwellers, what subjects do you recommend for this technique?
Anything.
Cityscape? Anything.
Anything.
Good answer.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a way of underpainting for your values. And I actually compare this to what it's really similar to is like if you're oil painting and you do that, what's that called? Forget the term for it. But
grisaille?
It's grisaille, yes, exactly, the grisaille, where, you know, if you're using like the little bit of oil painting that I did, which was right after that Carol Maureen workshop, the little bit of oil painting I did, I ended up actually, you know, Carol paints alla prima. She just puts her colors in, and she has different methods of starting with particular colors. But what I ended up with after practicing for a little while was my preferred method was to do the grisaille first with a wash of the burnt umber, and then I would lift out my highlights and I would lay in my dark tones. And so this is similar to that. I'm not lifting out the light parts, I'm leaving the light parts there and I'm putting in all the darker values in. But I'm ending up with this single toned value painting, underpainting. And when I'm done with all my values here with these warm tones, then I start to think about color. So it really is not subject specific. In fact, my workshops are just like this. They're not subject specific either. Even though I'm mostly doing animals, people think, oh, they want to learn how to paint a cow. Well, you know, just learn how to draw and you can draw anything. But when it comes to painting this way, I'm thinking of it more about that light, that warm sunlight, and how to catch that warm sunlight. If you start off warm, and then you cool off the shadows. So when I get to the pastel part, you'll see me using all of these cooler colors on top of these really hot underpainting values, the tones. And that's where the excitement comes from, is that combination of the warm, cool. But yeah, you can use this on anything at all. Maybe even a cloudy day, although, you know, it just depends on what kind of look you're after. You can also use this method with any other color that you want to try. Say you want to do this kind of thing in blue instead, and then add your warm colors afterwards. Or, you know, you could even just use grays or whatever. I don't know. I did a painting with grays once. I liked it, but it was so different than my usual that I had a hard time selling it. All right, let's see. Squinting now, and I want to make sure that I get any of these other little subtleties going in where they need to be. This is a little bit darker across this. Here. There we go. And if you lose part of your drawing, don't concern yourself with it. Like if I lose my lip line there, I can always draw it back in. The most important part is that you nail your values in the painting itself. Okay, that's better. And I have a little bit of transparency here in this terracotta. I don't really want that because the pastel colors I'm going to be putting in over here are going to be darker than this terracotta. Therefore, I want this terracotta to be as dark as it can possibly get. So I'm going to give that a second coat just to fill in whatever bit of transparency there was there to that, to make sure that it's dark enough. Maybe a little bit darker up here too. And inside this ear as well, it's very dark. Even in these large areas, I'm thinking about direction of the fur, because the texture is happening with these primers. And when the pastel goes on, you'll really see the texture. Let's see. I think some of this is actually a little bit darker too. And I'm going to show you my, my wet sponge primer technique on this, because I like the textures that are going on there, and if I go in with solid terracotta, I might overdo that sort of texture, or I might make this a little darker than I want it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip my sponge. This is usually the last part of my underpainting that I do. So just get this a little bit wet. And then I add a little bit of primer, squeeze that in. So I have some wet primer in my sponge now. And I'm going to go over this area to just try to tone this to more of the tone that I'm seeing there. I've kind of lost that little bit of light there, but that's not a big deal. That can be pasteled in. And then anywhere else that I think I could stand to be a little bit deeper, I can go in with this. Okay, so now what's happening in comparison, as these other values have gotten darker, what's happened is that my sky / background is looking rather pale, I think, in comparison to these strong contrasts down here. That I think I'm going to add just another layer of the gold color up there. See if I can deepen that just a hint more vibrancy to that gold tone. I'm just going to dip this right in the jar. And you'll see how the gold color compared to the terracotta really does not get much darker on each application. It gets just a little bit darker, but not a lot. So you don't want to really force the gold color to get too much darker at once. That's when you get like a super amount of texture that you might not like. So I'm just deepening this just with that third layer of the gold. You see how already it's setting off that highlight on the horn better. In fact, I might think about putting in a fourth layer of the gold. I usually don't, but it looks like it might work well with these other tones. Let's see what this would look like in here. Another layer just all through this lit up side right here. If I cover all of it evenly, then it'll cover up the lighter tone and the darker tone and push all of it down to a slightly darker value. This up here too. All right. So that's looking pretty good. I think for the sake of timing, I'm just going to leave that sky alone. I call this underpainting ready. Does anybody have any questions? I'll let this all dry for another 60 seconds or so. Anybody wanted to ask anything?
So Rita, this is Kath. I do have a question going back to the foam. Maybe a little bit foam focused at the moment.
Yeah.
But it seems like the one that you liked a little bit better that was firmer. So does that qualify as a high density foam versus like a memory foam or a regular type of foam?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, that foam by mail is the only place that I've found this. I think I do have some over here. I'm going to bring all my selections here that I've tried. Of course, my first try was the Airfloat, the stuff inside the Airfloat shipping boxes. Mm-hmm. And I've seen this come in different thicknesses too. I guess it depends on the size of the box, what they have in there. And that's pretty good stuff. I mean, if you do happen to need an Airfloat box, just keep that in mind. You can use those pieces on the inside. This is the pick and pluck from Foam by Mail. And it's really kind of cheap. I suppose it would work. The next time if I order any of this, I'm probably going to try to get a slightly thicker version because this was the 1 inch by 1 inch, but I swear it seems smaller than that. And then this I've tried. This is a chair cushion foam. And I think it said it was high density, but this is super soft. What I use this for is I'll cut off like big 2-inch pieces, 2-inch cubes, and I'll prime my larger boards with this stuff. I'll just dip it and like splat a whole bunch of primer on there and spread it out. Man, that is a workout, I'm telling you. But I'll use that for that. I rarely use that for doing my underpaintings with. Here's another option of like a chair cushion foam. See, this even says high density, but it's really not. Compared to this other stuff, this is like medium. And then this is the inside piece from the Foam by Mail. I think they call it the top or the bottom. The pieces that go, where the pick and pluck is in the middle, and this would be on top, and there's would be on one on bottom. So if you package something for shipping or you package something for storage, that's what the foam is for. This is the piece that I really like for detail work. And I'll just cut off pieces with scissors. I'll cut like a strip, and then I'll cut those into little wedges, and I'll use this stuff. It's really nice. Okay, I have two favorite dark pastels. When I get to the pastel part, this is where you really want to think pastel being dark to light process. So wherever you have colors on here that are going to be overlapping, you want to get the darker tone on first. Now, as far as a dark to light as a general rule over the entire painting, you can break that rule, especially when you underpaint like this, because you know where your light values are, you know where your midtones are, and you know where your dark tones are. So I can take my lightest value and I can put it in here. Right at the beginning, some of it. I do like to do this pretty early on because now the value scale of this underpainting has changed. Now this gold is not the lightest value. This pale warm white is the lightest value. So it's changed the scale of everything else. The other thing that I do then is I get in my darkest dark. So here, now you have a map of the entire value scale of everything you need. In fact, I don't even consider my underpainting finished until I do get all of this darkest dark in. This is one of my favorite darks. It's the Geralt number 376. And I really like it because it's a cooler kind of a brown. It's not burnt umber, it's some other kind of brown. Geralt has a lot of really nice browns. And there are other brands that could have a similar sort of color. I have one in a Terry Ludwig that's probably something like this. That's almost the same thing. But any kind of brown will work. But I like the cooler sort of brown because most of the time I'm putting this value in the shadows, in the shadow tones. So I don't really want a very warm brown in those areas because I want it to stay looking cool since it's in shadow. I probably could be using black or my Terry Ludwig eggplant for this eye, which I still might put a little bit in there. But I'm just thinking about values. So I just want to get this around to represent my darkest tones. Also, if you vary your pressure, like I've got a dark pressure over here and I have a lighter pressure over here, so you can get various tones. In the ear, I've done that also, just by varying your pressure. This works very well when you have an underpainting like this because you have these tones, these colors underneath that you can allow to show through. That's what I really like about this underpainting, is that I like being able to show the color that's under. I like letting it speak wherever it happens to work. Like a lot of this is going to show because it's almost just the same color that it needs to be for the painting.
Rita, it's Kath again. Do you typically, or at any time, do you pre-select maybe the colors that you're going to use in your palette and just kind of use that, out of your main box?
But I get that question every now and then, and actually I don't purposely pre-select. I might actually subconsciously be selecting colors that I know are going to work well for this as I'm digging around in my box. Like I'll have, like I've probably done so many Hereford cows that have particular colors in them that I'll know what I need. When I go to my box, I'll know what I need to get a certain look that I want.
Exactly.
In that respect, but yeah, I don't pre-select. And I probably ought to more often because way back when I had these odd frames, I think they were Hobby Lobby frames, and they had some really weird colors in them. They were like a greenish brown and a coppery sort of color in there. And I was like, these frames are not going to look good on my paintings, my colors that I use. So for those, I intentionally picked colors that matched what I saw in the frames. And I chose like half a dozen colors, and then I made sure that the other colors I used in the painting went along with those colors. And the paintings themselves looked a little different than my usual, but they sure looked good in those frames. So sometimes you do want to do that, or if you just want to try a different color palette that you're not used to, it's good to just experiment like that. I rarely get the chance to just experiment like that. I'm usually really stuck in my ways.
We do have a lot of people that are relatively new to pastel. And so I guess it's all an experiment, but it's really nice to be able to, present different ways that artists, how do you know what to pick up?
Oh yeah, yeah. Just if you ever get into that problem, like I don't know what color or I can't find the right color. In fact, strike the word color out of your vocabulary. If there's one really important piece of advice, that would be it. Color does not matter. It's value and then temperature. It seems like a lofty sort of thought, but it's not really. I had to hear it a lot. Like when I was learning, I had to hear value is more important than color, and probably half of you have already heard that from somewhere else. Value is more important than color. I had to hear that a dozen times before it started to sink in. And I would take that one step further, and there are other artists too that do. If you have value and temperature correct, you don't need to think about color. That's all color is. Color is value and temperature. So, if you have those two things right, it's all going to work. So anyway, back to the fun part of just painting. Okay, so there's a little bit of dark here. See, I'm still just thinking about value mostly. Although the dark, I'm kind of thinking about color because the dark that's in this part up here in the fur is not really this kind of dark. It's more of a violety, cooler sort of dark. So I'm gonna find some other violety sort of color. This might work. This is actually a new pastel. I think I use it a lot. It's pretty hard, but it's one of those muted sort of grayish blue-greens sort of. Maybe a violet actually. I need better. Maybe this one. Here's another. Here's a Giraud. I think this is a Giraud. But in these shadowy parts of the fur up here, a little bit cooler. So if you notice that I am working with my darkest colors first in these areas that I'm going to have some combinations. Like I don't want to jump right into that exciting mid-tone blue yet because this color is underneath it first. So I get some of this in here. Maybe if I just drag this like this, you see how the texture picks it up? Just the textures that I had from the primer. Just pick it up. And then you have, voila, that furriness. A little bit of this blue in the eye, too. Now we might want to get to some of that exciting blue now. Here's a nice bright blue that I like. This is a Art Spectrum Extra Soft Square. It's one of my new favorites. Start laying some of this tone in here.
It's amazing how that color in your hand and what you put on your sample, how strikingly different that underpainting has presented itself.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is what I love. I love the warmth right in there alongside the cool. And the neatest thing about this is that this is acrylic under there. All that warmth is acrylic. So it's not gonna move. It's not going to physically mix with this pastel. Like if you did a pastel underpainting and like rubbed it in with your hand or whatever, softened it up, and then you started putting cool colors on top of warm, you're gonna get mud. You're gonna get browns and grays. But with the acrylic, you have them both in there next to each other, as pure as they can be. I mean, I suppose you can do this with pastel if you utilize workable fixative in the manner that it's meant to be used. Workable fixative can really secure a layer of pastel pretty well. Put some of this in that light. All right, so there's some of that. Yeah. Let me spread this out just a little bit more. Since this whole area, this whole big block of the face is so washed out in the photo, it just went all to white. I'm going to be trying to use this pastel in various pressure to try to get some kind of shape, some kind of form going on there. Like right here would be the edge of the muzzle. And this might not be quite as bright. It's going out towards this section. Now wherever I start to get up here where I'm getting close to another color, especially a darker color, I like to keep this rag handy to wipe off bits in between strokes so that I don't get that same color muddying up my next stroke. Now, it's probably still a little too early for me to take this that far up here. I just wanted to get that shape a little bit more in there. Let's see. I want to maybe try to find the pinkish tone in here. First, the darker area is kind of greenish, and that's happening because the light's bouncing up from the grass. Reflected light is coming in this way. That is definitely greenish. So I'm going to take this sort of a darkish, mid-tone darkish green and layer some of this in there. Here. Some of this. And it's almost kind of that got a little bit of that here, although up here it's more of a violety kind of tone. If any of you have seen me demo before, you'll know I'm really big on violets and greens for my shadow tones. They just work really well. Let's see, this might be a little light. Maybe not. That works all right. Some of that in here. Ooh, I think that's definitely the color I'm seeing up in this horn also. Be a little bit of that here. You can vary your tone anywhere you put this stuff just by varying your pressure. If you want to mix it with what's there already, which is usually what I like to do, just use a really light pressure. This darker tone actually comes out more. I fixed his little tag scar in his ear. This is probably a cow, actually, a female. Yeah, I'm gonna put a little bit of eggplant in this eye. The eggplant, the Terry Ludwig eggplant, is what I like to use for my black. I've heard that artists either love it or they hate it. Some of this is pretty dark in here too. Maybe I'll put some of that there. Let's see. Maybe I need to show how light this is.
Rita, it's Kath. We have a question from Joe. She'd like to know, what gloves do you use?
Oh,
Are they fitting,
yeah,
and do they
they're-
irritate your skin being enclosed for so long?
No, I do get kind of sweaty, but it's a good kind of sweat. It's a moisturizing sweat. These are the ones from Costco. I get them, and I've noticed now. First time I saw these, they only had the medium, and luckily my hands are a nice medium size, so they fit me. And they're the nitrile ones, Kirkland. Now, the last time I was there, they also have small and large. So they have small, medium, and large. So I like them. I don't have a problem with, as far as I know, I don't have a problem with, what's that other material that, latex?
Maybe.
I don't think I have a problem with latex, but, you know, nitrile is good too. So, I don't know. I fell in love with them. I wasn't sure if I'd like them or not, but when, like, this is getting pretty well used. It's getting pretty well used, so after tonight I'll probably just peel it off, put it in the trash. My hand will be nice and clean and soft. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna jump over here to some of this nice gold color. Let's see. I'm gonna jump around in here too, actually, and get some of this bright, because not sure how much of this orange might be able to work by itself. Like this one that I just tried is very close to that primer color. I might not need much of that. But this brighter one is what I'm seeing in here. This is, that lid is picking up some light. If I drag this lightly, I can let a lot of that primer color show underneath it. However that's needed. Up here, got some. And around the ear, we got some. Now here I'm going to be wiping it off because it might be picking up some of that dark. Okay. And now right back here, to me it's looking like it needs to be more vibrant, like a reddish orange, but it could also be that what I need to do is cool this down. If I cool this shadow down, then this will look warmer. So I'm going to try that. It's a bit of dark right there first. Okay, try that. And the coolness that I'm seeing in there is kind of a violet-y. Oh wait, that's too dark. Sometimes you'll try something that won't be quite right, so you'll just figure out how it's different and try something else. Let's see. Maybe this one. There we go. So this is like a dusty sort of grayish violet. So I'm seeing some of this running through here. It's actually right there next to the light. So it gets farther up, it's turning warmer. See where else I might find this. I'm not really seeing it anywhere else. Maybe a little bit in here. So that helped warm that up a little bit. But I do still think there's something in here that's kind of like a nice deep red. Let's see. Look at this. There we go. That's nice. See that little bit of that in the ear too. See how in the ear it looks darker because it's glazing over some darker tones. A little bit in the nose maybe. This horn is picking up reflected light off of the warmth of the cow. A little bit of really hot reflected light right there. So I love about enhancing the saturation in Photoshop. I do that almost always. Okay, so now I think I can take one of my super hot oranges and run it through here. Since this underpainting is not quite getting the vibrancy that I was hoping for in some of these areas. Here I think it looks okay, but over here on this side, I'm seeing some super intense oranges. Right. Some of this dark. Some of this is darker. And this, I see this tone running through here. And then maybe I can get something in that eye then. So usually when you consider whites of the eyes, they're almost never white. They're never white except if there's a direct light shining in them, and then the highlight where the light is showing is going to be white. This is like a mid-tone grayish something or other. And usually, like, notice how I describe my colors. It's grayish something or other. It really doesn't matter what color it is. If it's the right value for in here, and it's cool enough to cool down that area, then it'll work. See? Okay, some of that might work in here. Actually, no. Maybe here. Oh, that's nice. Okay. Now when I'm looking at it, I think, okay, now it's time to go back to this blue shadow because I've given so much attention to this warmth. Now the blue is not quite popping well enough. It needs another value that's slightly lighter. Here's another of those Art Spectrum Extra Soft Squares, which I really like. I'm going to try this one on here next. This might be just the next value that it needs. So this up here might need a little touch of something just to give me the proper value happening there. Some of that color that's in the shadows, I'm going to do what I normally don't like to do, and I'm going to target some of these darker bits. If this is like a soft sort of muted, not very intense blue, it's soft like a dark value blue color. I'm going to target some of that terracotta that's still peeking through in areas. Probably should have had a little bit more of this underneath before I started putting the lighter blues on top. Would have worked better. This blue on the horn as well, way up here. Catching that reflected light off the sky. Then there's a lighter grayish. I'm going to try this sort of a slightly lighter blue-gray, violety gray, kind of coming around the side of this horn. As I hone in the larger areas and I start to narrow my focus down. And through here, I think that there's actually a lighter blue then. One of these, maybe this one. Along these edges. This is actually not that much. It's not quite light enough. Let's see. Maybe I can use this one. Actually, I think it's more of a violety, a pale violety blue. Maybe this will work. Seeing up here also. Oh yeah, there we go. That's what I'm seeing. Way up here on these hairs, seeing some of them lighter. See it here, through here. Here. A little bit here. Go. And then let's see what this looks like up here. The same color. I like to put whatever I've got in the subject is what I like to have some of in the background. Oh, this is nice. Look at those two colors, that orange and that blue-violet melding together up there. It's like one of my favorite parts of all of these animals is the sky. Alright, so there's some of that. Get some of this. This is that other orangey color that I thought was a little close to the value of the underpainting, but might have some use for it anyway. To kind of pop some of these edges a little bit. Some of this was the slightly lighter one. There we go. This, I think, gets a little lighter up here. There's a bit of white. Let me finish these white bits. Oh, I got like 5 minutes. Finish this highlight here.
Yes, we're doing well on time.
It's around. Then this gets a little yellower as it comes around. Actually, it gets that. It goes to this color, I think. This. There we go.
Rita, what size paper do you have? The board, the Gator board. What size is that?
It's 6 by 12.
Okay.
So it'll go with one of those 6 by 12 frames I already have.
Good planning.
Yes, I try my best. Sometimes I don't succeed, but I try my best to only paint to the size of frames that I have. Now, there was just something about those eyelashes that some value in there that's not as dark as this, and it's not as light as what's going on around there. I think actually this, that spot needs to go a little lighter. lighter and a little pinker. Like this up here. There we go. Shadow has some. It's the warm reddish fur, but it has some cooler lights coming from above. Here. And then that might push this value of this eyelash to the proper value. I don't know. Something close to that. I'm reddish under there, actually. That'll work.
Rita, we have a question about the archivability of the Gator board. It was my understanding if you put the ground on, that was that protective layer that would make the Gator board archival.
That's what I figure. Honestly, I don't know, but that's what I've heard, and I might be lazy, or I don't know, but I don't. It doesn't concern me that much. I don't know. What I've heard is that, I mean, it makes sense that these products are, I mean, you know, they're fine art products, and it's acrylic. So basically, this is plastic. When it dries, it's pretty much as permanent as you can get. It's the same stuff. You make paintings out of this, you know, acrylic paint. So you're covering up your Gator board with that. Mm-hmm. Now, what I've heard is that if you're really concerned about it, you should also prime your edges. So the edge here and around here like that. Because the foam part in the middle of the Gator board is probably the most, what's the word, fugitive or whatever. So if you prime the edges, it'll be fine. Now when I frame these, whether I use spacers or not, I'm taping all the way around those edges, from the glass all the way around to the back of the painting, the back of the board. So in my mind, that's sealing up the painting and all of the edges when it's framed.
And there was a second part of that. Was there a worry about, what was that called? That was off-gassing? With the off-gassing of the formaldehyde.
I don't know if you have formaldehyde in Gator board. I hadn't heard that. I've read that the surface itself is like a wood resin product. That's what makes it different from regular foam board, which is paper. So the surface is completely rigid. It's like a wood. It's basically a wood resin product. Now, I don't know exactly what the resin part is, but I figure I'm not painting on the Gator board. I'm painting on the acrylic primer that's on the Gator board. And honestly, I think Gator board itself is too new of a product to have been tested for, 100 years or so. I mean, there's no way to tell, just time will tell. But the Richardson boards, the ones that Richardson makes, that's primed Gator board. He uses Gator board as his support for those. I can probably think of a couple other ones that use similar things. But, the way I see it, you gotta do what you gotta do. And if you feel uncomfortable about it, just use something else, Just wet and tape down your watercolor paper as an added step to your process and use that. I've done just a handful of these on a really nice, good quality hot press watercolor paper. I really like how it feels, how it flows, how it goes on. I just don't have the patience to deal with the taping down. And the framing, when you frame it, you have to mount it to something. And you're probably going to mount it to Gator board because it's rigid. So I'd rather just paint it on the Gator board myself.
Well, that was really good. Chris did pipe in and said they do make archival Gator board. So I think that puts it to bed. I'm really, we might have a science subcommittee and maybe get Richard McKinley involved in that discussion.
The only thing I have to say about the acid-free Gator board, the acid-free Gator board, as far as I know, looks like this. It's got the paper on it that's acid-free, but the paper is brown. And this whole luminosity gold primer stuff is not going to work on a brown surface. You know, if you want to, you know, take this and gesso it so that it's white, and then do this process, you could do that. That would work. But I'm too lazy. Well, I didn't quite finish the nose, but it gives you a good, you know, if we have to stop now, I guess that gives you a good idea. I have a good warm, cool relationship there. I'd probably say I have maybe another 30 minutes or so of in private tweaking to this with my music on to bring it to a finish.
Well, Rita, we really appreciate you sharing such valuable information. I've learned a lot through this demonstration that you provided, and now I'll go back and reread and prep some, you know, materials. I can't wait to try this technique. I think it's something that will work really, really well for myself on my journey into the pastel world. And if anybody else has any other questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, and let's take advantage of maybe a minute or two and see if we can address any concerns you might have.
I thought it was wonderful. I loved how you put it together. It looks great.
Thanks.
That was Chris Overs.
Yeah, Chris Overs.
Oh, hi, Chris.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I really, really loved the way it came together.
Thank you. Well, thanks for coming along and hanging out with me.
Wow, thank you, Rita. Well, you'll be seeing more of me, that's for sure. You've got a new fan here.
This is terrific. Thank you so much. It's Margie.
Thanks. Yeah. If I could get a last minute little plug in of my Patreon page, if you guys enjoyed this demo, you might want to check that out. It's patreon.com/Rita Kirkman Studio. And
Okay.
I think I have more than 100 videos on there now from the last 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
And my son and I my son made it. We both thought it up, but my son programmed it, made an index page, which solved the biggest problem. The biggest thing I didn't like about Patreon is it's so hard to find things once you have so many posts. I mean, they do have a search feature, but it only searches like the words within the description or something like that. Anyway, I have a index page, which you can browse. It's on my website, and it's also on the description of my Patreon page in the public area also.
That's wonderful.
I
And we'll
have
be seeing you at IAPS, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
And if
As
you want
part
to
of
do the Pastel Live, sign up with my link. I'll send
Absolutely.
I'll
If
send it to
anybody-
you this evening when I get in the house. I'll send it to you, and then
on the
you
blog, Rita.
Huh?
We should put it on the blog.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be great.
It'll be great. Rita, thank you again so very, very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye.
Wonderful.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Bye.
Good presentation. Thank you.
Bye.